We're wrong and none of us know a thing. Which is possible, but if history repeats itself, and we all know that it does, and I see patterns, who's to say that you're wrong? In fact, these patterns going all the way back to the OJ trial are so blatantly obvious, they're sticking out to me like a dick on a birthday cake.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Seems like a good place to start.
It's beyond clear to me the state's seeking the DP to ensure they get a conviction because the stacked deck always favors the House. And you're stupid if you believe Bryan Kohberger is innocent. At least that's what I've been told. So welcome to the point. And before we get to it, please be respectful in the comment section. And remember that everything said here is alleged. Please do your own research, form your own opinion, and let me know that opinion because this is an open discussion channel where we try to be fair. And if more fair coverage on this story and others is something you're lacking, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. Because you heard me right, the DP charge skews the verdict heavily towards guilty more often than not. And if at the end of the day, the only thing all of us want is justice, we have to all admit that this is a problem, and this is a problem we need to fix. Now, of course, any passing is brutal. It's tragic and it's heartbreaking. But what determines the worst of the worst if all these crimes are considered the worst? Now, Pavarotti's video paralleled a lot of what I was going to say, so instead of essentially saying what's already been said, I'm going to link his video down in the description below. But what makes this a DP case is something I've often wondered. Is it determined by the number of victims? The manner of the attack? Are we saying Bryan Kohberger is as bad as Ted Bundy while at the same time saying one is too many? Or is the state looking at this case and saying we may lose this thing, so we need to do everything we can to ensure we get the verdict we desire? Because this is a problem if we want justice. Our only path to justice is through a fair and just trial. Now, my original guess very early on was that the state was trying to seek the DP in an effort to get the defense to offer up some type of plea. And it's beyond clear that I was wrong. It's also obvious to me that Ann Taylor legitimately believes Bryan Kohberger is innocent. And don't get in the comments section and pretend like you've heard every single criminal defense attorney speak the way she's speaking about her client. And even though everybody can see that, we'll still see it in the comment section all the time. People saying we're wrong. We don't know what we're talking about. How can we sit here and say that we see innocence, doubt, or we're having questions? And I hear you, but...
Yeah, I understand the argument.
Well,
I'll be frank, it's falling about as flat as you would expect it to fall before our Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of the United States.
Listen, we are all innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And I fully acknowledge that this trial hasn't started. The state may have that key piece of evidence. We know that they're saying they had the DNA on the knife sheath, which we're all presuming is skin cells. They've got video of a car resembling the car that Bryan Kohberger drives. And they believe that he hunted or stalked the home. So all that means he's guilty. We're wrong and none of us know a thing. Which is possible, but if history repeats itself, and we all know that it does, and I see patterns, who's to say that you're wrong? In fact, these patterns going all the way back to the OJ trial are so blatantly obvious, they're sticking out to me like a dick on a birthday cake. All these widely followed cases had the same exact elements, and how did they all turn out? Think about it. They have prosecutors who are so certain and in some situations overcharge the case, while they have criminal defense attorneys who overperform. They involve suspects who you wouldn't traditionally think would be a suspect, as well as victims that we all know didn't deserve what happened to them. Law enforcement either acted shady or acted in a manner to which caused concern.
to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point because we're not going to release why we think that.
The general public was split on whether this person was guilty or innocent. And the legacy media heavily covered this story as if the accused was guilty. Now, of course, OJ is the outlier in this story. That criminal defense team could have took down the Roman Empire, so let's leave them out of it. But how did the rest of these turn out? Amanda Knox was an American student studying abroad in Italy. Her roommate from England, Meredith Kircher, would be found in their apartment brutally attacked. Now, the initial headlines in that story said that Amanda Knox was being charged with this crime and she confessed to it. They had their confession and she was being hauled away. And it was a story that garnered almost immediate international attention. And while she stayed incarcerated for some time, it would be found out later that the biggest part of her confession was due to the fact that she was intensely interrogated for 30 or 40 hours depending on what report you read. And ultimately she would be freed and sent back to the United States. And where is she now? Because if I recall, it was Rudy Gaudet who actually got charged with that crime. Kasey Anthony was another one. She was a young single mother whose daughter was found passed away. Almost every single headline said that she committed this crime, and there are even people today who still believe she did and think she got off of it. But the headlines, the reports, and law enforcement were very insistent that they had what they needed to prove she did this. And yet her attorney Baez was easily able to poke holes and cast doubt with very little effort. So is she behind bars right now? Karen Reed was charged with passing away her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, by hitting him with a vehicle, and law enforcement said resoundingly they had everything they needed to prove Karen Reed committed that crime. They had the evidence, they had the witnesses, they had absolutely every single piece in place to get this conviction. And what happened in that trial? The FBI would hire an independent accident reconstruction team to go over this crime scene, and what they found was that car could not do that. And while we were all led to believe before this trial started Karen Reed was guilty of this act, she would ultimately have a mistrial. And she is currently awaiting her second trial on these same charges. And I got a video coming out in a day or two about the recent updates with her case. And we are now a day and a half to 2 days at verdict watching the Richard Allen story. What's going on there? You had two young girls who didn't deserve what happened to them get passed away on a trail, while Richard Allen, the person they're saying committed this crime, has no criminal history. And before this trial started, almost all of us, not everybody, but the vast majority of us believe Richard Allen committed this crime. And we were once again spoon-fed all these headlines pointing out how Richard Allen committed this crime. That the state had everything they needed. They were going to be able to prove this. They had that one piece of evidence that was going to put him away. But as you can tell on social media, more and more people are seeing reasonable doubt or having reasons to believe that he's not guilty of this crime. But before the trials and hearings started in each one of these stories, we were all led to believe the suspect was guilty. The mainstream media told us law enforcement had everything they needed. Once again, Richard Allen did not nearly have the amount of support he has right now until after this trial ended. Nobody was thinking what would happen in that situation happened, especially considering the defense had one hand tied behind their back. Listen, I've said from the beginning, if anyone's deserved the right for fair coverage and the presumption of innocence, it's absolutely Bryan Kohberger. And I've also said when this trial starts, everyone needs to be prepared on both sides of this thing to be shocked. We've seen nothing so far within this coverage to prove that that man is guilty. I mean, think about it. We've seen absolutely nothing. We've seen nothing before the trial like we saw with Sarah Boone, and the same for Wade Wilson, and the same for Rex Heuermann. So everybody on the opposite side of this conversation needs to stop pretending like we're advocating for a guilty person to walk. I'm advocating for a fair trial and transparency, and I'm just pointing out similar patterns that I've seen in the past. I mean, if he did it, then he should pay. I've always said that. That's never changed. But I don't see an open and shut case. And I'm not seeing how y'all are so sure. With the exception of Patrick here, he lays out polite, respectful counterpoints to a lot of this stuff that I say, which is the point of this channel. We've lost the ability to discuss, we've lost the ability to talk, and we've lost the ability to politely disagree. But that DP certified jury statistic is absolutely concerning to me, and if it's concerning to you, let me know down in the comments below. Y'all be safe now.